Hello everyone. Today we will talk about .NET Aspire. A few words about me. I'm a senior .NET developer at DataArt, a Microsoft MVP. Many may already know me from .NET MAUI community as I am one of the .NET MAUI community toolkit core maintainers. You can also find interesting videos and publications on my website, LinkedIn, and YouTube. But today we are talking not about .NET MAUI, but about .NET Aspire. .NET Aspire is designed to improve the experience of building .NET Cloud-native apps. It provides a consistent, opinionated set of tools and patterns that help you build and run distributed apps. .NET Aspire is designed to help you with orchestration, integrations, and tooling. In .NET Aspire, orchestration primarily focuses on enhancing the local development experience by simplifying the management of your cloud-native apps, configuration, and interconnections. .NET Aspire orchestration assists with the following concerns: app composition. Specify the .NET project containers, executables, and cloud resources that make up the application. And service discovery and connection string management. The app host manages injecting the right connection string or network configurations and service discovery information to simplify the developer experience. On this screenshot, you can see a pretty familiar pattern builder where you have web builder, but now we use distributed application. We create the builder of it, then we add a Redis server to our application, and then we add a front-end project and said that it has a reference to Redis server. So front-end application depends on our Redis cache. The NetSpy integrations are NuGet packages designed to simplify connections to popular services and platforms, such as Redis or Postgres. The NetSpy integrations handle many cloud-native concerns for you through standardized configuration patterns, such as adding health checks and telemetry. So in this sample, we have a builder at Azure Service Bus Client extension method. So what this extension method does. So first of all, it registers a Service Bus client as a singleton NDI container for connection to Azure Service Bus. Then it applies Service Bus client configurations either inline through code or through configuration. And finally, it enables corresponding health checks, login and telemetry specific to the Azure Service Bus usage. You can learn more about it on the following link. And the last part of .NET Aspire. .NET Aspire comes with project templates and tooling experience for Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, and .NET CLI to help you create and interact with .NET Aspire project. If you use another IDE, for example Rider, it also supports .NET Aspire. So when you create a new .NET Aspire project, this is how it looks like. So you have your uh, two projects, API service and web. You're familiar with it, one for API, another Blazor app, and you have two new projects, app host and service defaults. So let's build our first .NET Aspire project. For that, let's start with a new project in Visual Studio. Let's start with a blank solution. We will create first our general project as a web API and Blazor. Assume we have an API and front end, and then I will show you how to create a new .NET Aspire project. First of all, you can also create a .NET Aspire starter app project. .NET Aspire has predefined templates, but let's add .NET Aspire to existing project. So let's start with a blank solution. Let's name it Aspire Demo and click Create. New solution is created. Let's now add a new project. Let's start with our API. Click Next. Let's call it API Service. Click Next. From the template, you can see that all projects already have a predefined and list in the .NET Orchestration checkbox. So when you create a new project, you can automatically add .NET Orchestration, but let's skip it for now. So let's create our project. And let's add a new project as a Blazor web app, assuming it's our front end. Let's name it front end. The same, you can see you can add the .NET Orchestration. Let's click create. So we have two projects, front end and API service. In API service, we have one endpoint, weather forecast that return us weather. In front-end project, we have components, we have pages, we have weather page that returns us and generate us a random weather and return it to our UI. So let's make the front-end project call our API service and make a real responses. So for that, let's first create a new service that will be used to communicate with API service. Let's create a public class with a service, and it will has one method, public facing weather forecast array get forecast, and it will return us response from HTTP client. Let's inject HTTP client in our constructor and return await client get from JSON, and our response URL is weather forecast. So also let's make our weather forecast class public, and that's it. So the next step is that we need to inject our service to this page using inject weather service. Let's call it weather API, and instead of random forecasts, let's call our service with API get forecast pasting. So this can be. The next step is that we need to register this weather API service in our dependency injection. So for that, let's add builder services, add HTTP client for weather service, and our client base address, we can get it from configuration. Also for this configuration, let's add this configuration to our app settings. So for that, let's add a new section weather or forecast weather services, we called it, name it here, and it has a URL, and base URL will be HTTPS localhost Let's take a look at the real port. We can get it from API service properties, launch settings, and our port is this one, HTTPS. And let's keep it here. So with the service URL, our configuration is done. So now we need to run our projects. For that, Visual Studio has multiple projects execution. In solution properties, you can choose multiple startup projects. In API service action, you can choose start and choose debug HTTPS. The same can be applied for front-end project. And let's name it. Let's rename it to API front-end. Okay, and click OK. You can see the new configuration appeared here. So let's start our project. So you can see two windows appeared. The one is for our API service. We can make some requests here. We can see we get some response from Swagger. We can also see our laser application, and it returns some weather when we update the page. So to make sure it actually runs from our API, let's put some breakpoint here and update our weather page again. You can see we have breakpoint here, so we can continue get our response. Great. But assume you need more dependencies. For example, you need to communicate with many services. So you need to add some additional configuration for database, for cache output caching, for any other services. So all these configurations need to be up to date. You need to manually update and choose right connection string, correct the endpoints, etc. So it may be difficult from time to time, and .NET Aspire should help you with that. So let's now add our .NET Aspire project. For that you need to create right-click on your project, add, and choose .NET Aspire Orchestration support. When you click on that button, you will see a pop-up that suggests you what to do next, what will happen. So it will say that it will create two new projects, app host and service defaults. And let's click OK. So what happened? We now have two new projects, app host and service defaults. Let's take a look what's inside of these two projects. So you're familiar with web application. In .NET Aspire, it's a distributed application builder where you build your application. So in this case, we added API service with the name API service, and we build our distributed application. Let's now do the same for front end. For that, you can also click on front-end project, add .NET Aspire Orchestrator support, and in that case, .NET Aspire and Visual Studio already understand that you already have a .NET Aspire project, so it will update and add front-end to your project. Let's click OK. Great, you can see our project added here with some magic source generation in behind. It added API and front-end project in our app. So now we need to somehow say that front-end project depends on API service. So for that, let's define a new variable API service. And for front-end, we can easily add it with reference and specify that it's an API service. Now our frontend knows about API service. What is our next step? For that, let's go to our frontend, and in app settings JSON, we can get rid of this hard-coded base URL, and we can replace it with just API service. Pretty easy. So thanks to discovery, service discovery, we can use this name, and this name is the same as we specified here in our service. When we execute our app host, you can see we now have a new startup project. Let's see how it works now. So our project is starting, and now .NET Spy comes with dashboard. You can see all your resources, their state, their name, when it started, the source, all endpoints, log, and details. Let's now go to our frontend project, go to weather, and you can see that we back to our breakpoint. Let's click continue, and we get our response. So let's also take a look at our details, for example, for frontend. And here you can find all necessary information, all environment variables, all information about your project. And here in the bottom, you can see that it automatically added services API service variable and with the value of the endpoint of our API service. So that is great. You can also take a look at logs of each project. For example, for frontend, you can see its logs. So what happened there? We started our HTTP request with a GET to API service. Then it's resolved the URL and replaced it with localhost and sent our HTTP request. We received response, and also you can see that under the hood it uses a poly strategy to make your application resistant. If we take a look at the API service, we do not see any logs here, only the application started. So the next step that exists within .NET Aspire is structured logs. And here it is much easier for you to see all your logs. So they are automatically parsed and displayed for you. You can take a look at some traces here and see how your requests were executed. So we see that we started a front-end project and then we triggered our API service. Of course, the next tab allows you to see all metrics for API service. You can see number of active requests and all other telemetry information for each of your services, as for frontend, as for API service. And let's see how it actually configured for us. Let's now stop our project and back to service defaults project. So in service defaults project, we have one very important method, add service defaults, and this method automatically configure all necessary information for all services. So it configure telemetry, it add default health checks, it add service discovery, it configure HTTP client with resilience handler for you. Also for telemetry, you can specify what to include, what exclude, all traces there. You can also export your telemetry, for example, to Azure Monitor or Jagger or any other service. As for health check, it already has a predefined health check for self and uses all best practices for the health check endpoints. You can configure it up to you with all your configurations, and this add service default method is called in each of your application. So you can see that NetSpy updated your program CS file for API service and added add service defaults, and the same applied for front-end project and also added service defaults for you. That's great. And let's, for example, add caching for our HTTP response for our API service. And as I mentioned before, that NetSpy comes with integrations. So there are two types of Nuget packages that you need. One for our app host, and another is for our API, and another for our general project. So for caching, let's click on dependency and choose add.NET Aspire package. And now we can see a lot of .NET Aspire packages already created for you, and you can choose any component, any integration you need. For example, you can choose Python, you can choose Azure Search, you can choose Dapper, Azure Storage, but in our case, let's use Redis. Let's click Install and click Accept. So our package added. Our next step, we need to add this package to our distributed application. So for that, let's create a new variable Redis. We can choose builder, add Redis. And now we need to specify that this Redis package will be used in our API service. For that, as you already know, we can use with reference and just specify Redis. That's it. So what happens here? It will automatically add a dependency to your API service. It will configure all connection strings. It will add it to your app settings or environment variables. And API service will know how to connect to Redis. Also, with the configuration of Redis, we can choose additional settings here. So we can choose that we want to use some Docker container, or we can use image tag that we want to use. So let's say we want to use egg latest, for example, and configuration of the .NET Aspire app host is done. Let's now add it to our API service. So for that, let's add a new .NET Aspire package. And as you can see from the list, there are a lot of predefined packages for you. You can choose whatever you want, so Kafka, Seek, MySQL connector, whatever you need. And for our case, for caching, for output caching, we can use Aspire Stack Exchange Redis output caching. Let's install it. Click accept. And now in our program CS, the only thing we need is to register it. So builder, add Redis output cache, and for connection name, we just use Redis. Pretty easy, right? You do not need to care about the correct format of connection string. It will automatically create it and resolve for you. So the next step is, and for our endpoint, we want to use cache. use cache output, builder, and for builder we want to say that it will expire in, let's say, time span from seconds. Let's choose 10 seconds. So, and the last thing that we want to use use output caching. Great. That's it. Let's now start our app host and see how it actually works. So if I open Docker, you will see that it automatically starting a Docker container for Redis. It automatically started for us. And now we can see that Docker container is also appeared in our .NET Aspire resources page. We can see that it's up and running. We can see its endpoint. Also, if we take a look at our login and our details of our variables, you can find in connection strings for Redis. We have a valid connection string. Let's now go to our frontend project and make some requests. So let's update. You can see after updating the page, our weather forecast remains the same. And as I said, 10 seconds cache expiration. Let's now update. You can see our weather updated. And now let's take a look at our structured logs. For example, let's take a look at this trace. You can see that for our request, we can start a front-end project. Front-end project executed API service, and API service received data from cache. If we take a look at another log, for example, in structured logs, let's take a look at this one. You can see in case of no data in Redis, it will try to get it. It will return. It will also execute a set our cache information. And that's it for .NET Aspire dashboard. Also, you can use beautiful light and dark theme for .NET Aspire, and it's all predefined for you using Blazor. If you want to publish your project, you can right-click on your app host and click Publish button. Visual Studio will open a UI for that. You can click Next. It will create Azure Container App. You can choose your location, any from the list, let's say East US. You can choose the environment name, let's say Test, and click Finish. So it will create a profile project for you and configure all necessary information for publishing your application. It will also configure all required services that are needed. It will, and when it's ready, you will just click a publish button, and your project will build Docker images and publish them to your Azure Container Registry. After that, you will be able to run your project. So that's it for our presentation of .NET Aspire and how to easily create and add it to your existing projects. And let's now back to our presentation. Official documentation and samples can be found on these websites. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.